developing over $36 million worth of projects at just 38 years old and profiting over $5 million, you're about to hear a very different story of success.
I've seen other people do it. Why couldn't I do it? Take away all of those unknowns, it makes it really difficult to fail now. The development income was surpassing my regular job income.
This episode, we unpack the story of property investor and developer Ross Versteegh, talking about some of the huge wins he's had along the way.
As soon as the bank would allow me to borrow more money, I was spending that money. Property people make it seem like it's harder than it is.
But more importantly, unpacking the struggles in the early days.
I didn't have the money to do a subdivision. I didn't have the money to pay for 2 mortgages at once, even though I had my friend living with me.
But Ross's story isn't just about big numbers. We drill down into the nitty-gritty details and the lessons he's learned to share with everyone who wants to make millions in property.
There's never a dumb question. You're not expected to know what every single part of the build process is.
Can you share 3 of the main tips?
Can that be divided? You're buying something for market value and you build 3, you're going to get just as much money by selling the block of land. You might be able to get almost 90% of the outcome of your profit by just...
If you like a story about managing risk, learning lessons and losses along the way to making millions of dollars, you're going to enjoy this episode. My name's Todd Sloan. This is the Pizza and Property Podcast, and you're listening to my chat with Ross Versteegh. Ross Versteegh, how are you, mate?
Very good, thank you.
Mate, it's good to have you on the show. This is especially as a fellow Adelaide boy as well.
Yeah.
Dude, you are killing it in the development space. $36 million worth of projects underway, $5 million worth of profit, and you're in your 30s, yeah?
Yeah, 38.
Okay. I'm looking forward to pulling a lot of your story apart, mate. The keys to becoming a full-time developer, something that we're going to discuss a little bit later on in the show. Yep. Before we get into that side of things, and instead of talking about where you are now, let's rewind it a little bit and talk about the first deal so we can understand a bit more about how you got to where you are now. Can you tell me about how it all came together?
Yeah. So the first deal was way back in 2008, sort of just after the GFC. I just got my job as a building designer at an architectural firm.
Okay.
And obviously, when you're living at home, you're sort of looking to move out of home, start getting a house. So looked at getting a house down south, and being a boy, I want a big shed. So looking at blocks, been speaking with a mortgage broker for quite a while now, been sitting at that 6-month mark where it's sort of you can start using your income as a salary to be able to buy a house, and got pre-approved, and then just started like throwing that out like it was candy onto all the different properties, anything with a huge shed basically.
And how far south are you talking?
Around the Morpher Vale region, yeah.
Okay, so we're talking like 25, 30 Ks south, that kind of thing?
Yeah, about that, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Seemed further that back then as well.
And so by this stage, 2008, you're buying the property. Like, why are you buying it? To add value, to develop, or it's just like, I just want a house?
Just want a house, just get in the market. Having read the books, Rich Dad Poor Dad and the Steve McKnight, 0 to 130 houses.
Yeah, classic.
Growing up in, I think I read them around about high school. Would have been about 16, 17, something like that when they sort of came out.
Why are you getting given a book like that in high school? I don't remember anyone passing me, like, I was getting past magazines, but not books like that.
Yeah, the Rich Dad Poor Dad one was actually from my uncle. I had a pretty well-off uncle.
Okay.
At the time, seemed well off, and I started showing interest in money and houses and businesses and such. And so he was like, hey, you should read this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I was like, I don't really like reading very much. He's like, I'll give you $50 if you can read it by next weekend and tell me what it's about. And so, I read every single page of that till I could understand it.
And so you were just busy thinking, he's going to quiz me, so I've got to
100%, yeah.
And $50 when you're a 16-year-old then?
That's ridiculous, yeah. My job at, I think it was Hungry Jack's at the time, was like $6.15 an hour. So that's like 2 weeks worth of work, all for reading a book.
Pretty good uncle to be able to actually do that as well.
Yeah, exactly. So gave me the book and quizzed me on it, asked me like 3 things. What was his first business, which was the toothpaste business. And that was pretty much it. Gave me the $50. I was like, wow. But obviously all that knowledge had sort of sat in me, nothing that you could really, action at 16 years old, but, it really, really sets you off on that path.
You still talk to him now?
The uncle, unfortunately, he was the in-law uncle, so he's not part of the family.
I was going to say, I bet he's super proud to see where you're at now.
Yeah, surely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So 2008. So you're buying a place to live in. You've got influence from some family members at the time that are basically going, look, get your head screwed on. Here's a few things to help you get there.
Yeah.
By the sounds of things, they're not giving you money. They're giving you the knowledge.
Yep.
You're then running with that knowledge to buy a PPR. How does this start transitioning into like adding value and developing?
Yeah, so the house was actually in relatively decent condition, but huge backyard, and the backyard was on a corner block. So basically, being in the architectural industry, designing houses. A large home builder was who we were designing most of the houses for. They're all really small, you know, designed typically on 300, 400, 500 square meter blocks. So their house designs were quite, at the time, comically small, you know, 3-bed, 1-bath, 3-bed, 2-bath, and really narrow courtyard blocks, villa blocks. And jokingly one day I just overlaid one in my backyard, laughing to a friend in the office and said, have a look at this. This person's house fits in my backyard. How awesome's that? And then it clicked. I was like, I can actually put a house in my backyard. I'm like, I've already read this. This happened before, you know, with Steve McKnight, and I've seen him do it with multiple things. And it wasn't like I hadn't heard of it before. Everything just came together like a light bulb moment. And so then I just thought I should actually go do it. You know, so I asked my boss, the architect, you know, how would I go about doing a division? And he goes, I don't know, speak with the surveyor. You're going to have to get the boundaries drawn up. So that's what made me set off and go speak to a surveyor, found a surveyor online. And then, yeah, from there, that was it. Just lodged the division effectively, having no idea what to do and just following the process.
But this is a process you obviously know intimately now, but you didn't know at the time. You were basically just following the next step in front of yourself.
Yeah. I couldn't have even told you what council I was in at that stage. I would have no idea. Yeah.
Okay. And what gave you the confidence to do it?
People have done it before, you know, so it wasn't like property development you can't be successful in it. Like you can be successful, you know, people have done it, you know, I've read about it, I've seen other people do it. So why would I be any different? Why couldn't I do it?
Okay. And so you were like what, early 20s, mid 20s?
Yeah, I was 21, 22.
21, 20. Oh, so real early 20s. Okay. And so you've got some cash behind you from what, savings or?
No, just started. So I bought the house with $5,000 of my own money, $5,000 of a birthday present from my 18th. That was from Dad. Yeah. And then the $17,000 homeowner grant.
Right. So you were all in with a pretty huge LVR.
Yeah, 97%.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, one of the last ones through ANZ. Just as everything was turning to shit with the markets.
Okay. So you've got a huge LVR. Can't really get those anymore. You can still get 95.5s though, at some places, but you're getting 97%.
Yeah.
97%. Okay. So you're then going, I can build a house, I can subdivide, but you don't have the cash yet.
No cash. No.
Where's it coming from? Because I feel like that's an interesting rock to look under.
Yeah. That one. So again, one of those things that Rich Dad Poor Dad says in his book when he's going to get a business loan or a house loan or something, and he goes to the bank and the first bank says, no, you can't get the loan because of X, Y, Z.
Yep.
So then he goes and gets X, Y, Z and goes to the next one. They say, okay, you also need A, B, C. Then he goes to the next one. He keeps building what he needs until the last bank, he's got so much information. The bank's like, okay, here you go. Here's the money. And so basically I kind of did that. I didn't have the money to do a subdivision. You know, I was getting quotes of, you know, at the time, a division should have cost around $18,000, $20,000. I was getting quotes of like $30,000, $40,000. But I knew no different. I thought that's just what it cost to divide.
Did they just see a naive kid walking in the door?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or maybe that's just what they charge to handle the process, etc. You know,
okay.
I just put it down to education now. I just go, well, I just paid $40,000 to learn how to divide, you know, or 20. Would it cost 20 anyway? And 20 is just spent, you know, paying someone to show me how to do it.
Such a good way to look at it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, obviously I'm earning, you know, minimal amount of money. I had a friend move in with me, help pay some mortgage, you know, because it was, you know, relatively high. And so as we were starting to do the division, basically I saved up some money, got the approval for the division. So it's just what's called a conditional approval, meaning you've still got all the rest of the payments to be done. It's usually only about $5,000, couple of $1,000 to get the conditional DA. From there, I took that conditional DA to the bank and said, hey, I've got a block of land here valued at, you know, minimum X. Can I borrow against it? They're like, you don't have a title. We can't give you money against something that doesn't exist. I'm like, but you can see it will exist though if we just pay if we pay these fees. And so this went on for, I think probably around 3 or 4 months till eventually they basically gave me a line of credit and I could get basically that money. I never got to see the money, but I would show them the invoices of the parts due as the development was progressing.
Almost like part payments for like a build.
Yeah, exactly. So they had it as like a line of credit, and then as say SA Water came in, the bank would pay that on my behalf, and so on and so forth until eventually the division got completed.
And you did this with, by the sounds of things, the money that came in from renting the spare room out to your mate was starting to get saved up, and that's what paid for like the first couple of grand?
Yeah. Everything that was being saved for from my work or from my friends, you know, room renting, that was just going to living expenses. And if there was anything left over, it would also go to sort of the site works because you obviously got to put a fence up, you need to remove sheds, etc. I think at the time it cost nearly $2.5 or $3 to remove the shed for the slab. Turns out you can just get rid of sheds for free. You don't have to pay someone to get rid of them. You can just put it on Facebook Marketplace or Gumtree.
Someone comes in, takes it?
Yeah, they take it. So one of the other projects we did, I gave the shed away for free as long as they took away the slab. So that then
good condition
cost me nothing, you know. But the first one cost me $3,500 to get rid of. So while I wasn't able to pay for the division, the fees necessarily, I could pay for all the on-site works as I was saving it up.
All right. You're obviously a creative problem solver. Where's this come from? Is this mum? Is this dad? Is this part of their uncle's influence? Like, it feels like this is just woven into who Ross is as a person.
Not sure. I think I'm just a creative. You know, I like art, I like problem solving, I like puzzles. You know, very much into video games growing up. So maybe there's a bit of that as well. Just that generation, you know, we like playing video games. Usually they're problem solving. So
this isn't something that you've like had to learn to become. This is just, you've just always been like this?
Yeah, pretty creative forever. Always into those sort of things.
It seems to be paying dividends. Okay. So you're developing the first one from some cash saved up by renting out a room. You had no idea what the process is, but you figured as long as I know the next step, I can just keep figuring out the next step and the next step and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
You're then producing an equity uplift that you're getting lending from the bank. And what did the final figures turn out to be? How much did you make out of that first deal?
I think it was around about $85,000.
$85,000. And we're talking 15 odd years ago now.
Yeah.
So big. What are you earning per year then?
I was on 40.
It's just 2 years' wages.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Okay. All right. And so is that when it's like light bulb moment? I'm going to try and do this again and again and again?
Correct.
Or
Yeah. So once I realized, once I could get that title through and I had that title, I was like, wow, this is amazing. I could go build a brand new house on here. You know, ideally the one that I'd overlaid in, although at this stage I had a bit more drafting capabilities. So a custom design was probably more on the cards. And so I was like, I could build a brand new house here and I could sell the old existing house and then get back what I paid for it. And then so as we're going through that process and looking more into, you know, started really looking into realestate.com by that stage because I kind of was hooked from when I first started searching my property and realized that, you know, I'm going to get a bit of money. Maybe I could just do this again, you know, flip that $80,000, you know, spend 40 of it on a deposit, another LMI loan, for instance, you know, and then have 20 grand or so to do another division or a reno or both or whatever. And so then from there, I managed to find a property almost around the corner effectively.
Now that one is actually something we're going to get into in a few questions time because that didn't go according to plan, did it? No. Okay. Before we get into that, I wanted to ask you about the difference between possible and profitable. Okay. Because I speak to people a reasonable amount of time. You would do this daily on, I found a site, I can do this. And it's like, yeah, it's possible, but like, what do the numbers actually say? Can you share 3 of the main tips that you've refined over the years to really focus in on understanding that difference between possible and profitable when it comes to site selection?
So the first one you want to look at for possible is obviously, can that be divided? And that's obviously based on the council zoning. And then if it can be divided, great. How's it going to be profitable? You know, are you paying around the market value for that property or are you paying overs? Or did you get a really good deal and you're paying unders? You know, maybe it's off market and it's a delinquent estate and you're getting unders. That still only tells you one part of the story. What's the actual market value going to be for either A, the raw land, or B, the full built out product? You know, if you're doing a 1:3, for instance, and you're buying something for market value and you build 3, you know, are you going to get that uplift by building out or are you going to get just as much money by selling the block of land? Because you're going to have holding costs if you build out. You know, you're going to be looking at around about a year to build out. Obviously, we've just come out of like 2 years sometimes, you know, and sometimes depending on the builder, you can get it down to like say 6 to 9 months. But if we just allow a year, you're going to have holding costs on all of those now new house loans plus your original purchase. So that can then chew into your potential profit.
So you're saying one of the difference between possible and profitable then is people not really allocating enough for holding costs?
Yeah, well, choosing the right strategy. You know, you might be able to get almost like 90% of the outcome of your profit by just selling the land as it is. You know, doing the subdivision and then just selling off the land.
So when you're doing a FISO, do you go top down or bottom up, or how do you normally work them out?
It depends. If we get given a price, like if it's online, chances are we got given a price, and then we do tiny bit of market research to work out, you know, what is the market value for a brand new 3-bed, 2-bath, 1-garage home, for instance, on a similar size block of land that we're going to be ending up with, and then from there we would. Again, obviously our spreadsheet calculates a lot of it for us, but then we can then work out how much is it going to cost to build based on how big the house might be. And then we go, this is what we can pay for it to make it X profitable. But if we already know what it's going to be sold for, because the agent goes, you can't get it for anything less than this, it either makes a pretty number in the bottom of the spreadsheet or it doesn't. That's it.
Yeah.
We don't try and complicate it too much, because we're looking at a lot of deals all the time. So we need to make sure like it either works or it doesn't. You know, I don't want to massage the numbers so much that you're like, oh, if we do this and maybe this, and we might be able to just squeeze out that extra little percent, because if you're massaging the numbers that much, then maybe you shouldn't just be doing the deal at all.
Did you ever do that?
Sometimes you're a bit more hopeful, in your resales and everything. But I think it's been pretty fortunate, from 2008 to 2018, there was nearly no growth in down south, We're buying houses at the beginning. I think my first house was 274,000. And I think the last one I picked up pre-COVID was 310. That's 10% over 10 years. That's terrible. But perfect for me as I'm starting out as a developer, to leapfrog from development to development to development and keep rolling that cash into new deals.
And so how long until you went, all right, I'm going to take on a couple at a time? Because I feel like that's probably the next kind of gutsy move, to be like, I can actually do two at once. Yeah.
I mean, really, I probably started running, almost consecutively. Nearly never did I have a development finish where I wasn't either already looking at a new project or had already purchased or had a contract for another new project. It's basically capacity, borrowing capacity. As soon as the bank would allow me to borrow more money, I was spending that money.
You were just in.
Yeah. I had a meeting with the bank once about borrowing some money to finish off a division on a second project. Yeah. And they're like, well, how much are you looking for? And I said $1 million. And she nearly fell off a chair. And I was like, well, whatever you would give me, I'm just going to throw out a number. You come back to say how much I can actually get.
Yeah.
And
what'd you end up getting?
Probably only enough to do the division realistically, or the next project. But I thought, why not ask?
Yeah. Don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah.
I feel like there's just some kind of, and I don't know how to describe it, but almost this like logical confidence that you've got. You don't feel like outlandish, like it doesn't feel like there's this arrogance or ego. It just kind of feels like your confidence comes from well, why can't I do it? It's like let's just keep moving forward. Let's just keep doing this, because as soon as I asked you that, I was expecting some kind of an answer of like, oh, I wasn't too sure about this, and then that was a big decision. But your answer is just kind of like, well, if I could get the money, I'll just do it.
Yeah.
It's like the doubt is almost irrelevant for you. Like, do you ever struggle with doubt, or is that just something that's like, no, that's not me?
No, I've pushed it back a lot, to be fair. Back when I first started, I was in my early 20s, and people, especially older, at the time they might have been in their 40s or 50s and like, I've lost money on property before, and be careful, it's pretty risky, or you don't really want to go into too much debt, etc. I was like, I'm like 25, 28, 30. Who cares? I can restart my whole life again if I need to. I'll go back and get a full-time job. Like, it makes no difference, So I think it's because I'll be happy to just start again if it all fell to pieces, and so maybe that's why I have the confidence. Also, it's just a numbers game, property, people make it seem like it's harder than it is. It's just numbers. So if you do the calculation correctly, then there's no real way. I mean, the market could dip heaps, but you'd have to have the market dip like drastically in a very short period of time, for a development.
But what about the uncontrollables though? Because it's actually my next question is talking about like construction and the delays, builders going completely under. Like, that's something that even if you do your numbers perfectly, that's a pretty big risk to manage.
That is true, yeah. We have built with a few builders that have, our projects have been nearly the final projects before they've gone into liquidation or receivership.
Yeah.
But I think it's because where I've been sort of placed at the beginning of my career as a drafter, as a building designer, I've built those networks and relationships with a lot of either the larger builders or the smaller builders. Obviously, the smaller builders are much more likely to go under, but they're also much more likely to give you a more transparent price than the larger builders. I built through large builders before. I didn't like the experience very much. I got an okay product for okay money. I feel like the smaller builders, I've got a better product for okay money.
Talk to me about what's better.
More control over the build specifically. So when you use a large builder, they're pretty much going to say, this is how your house is. These are the 3 tiles you can choose. This is what you get. And if you change anything, double the contract price. Not quite like that, but
just
effectively.
Huge.
Yeah. Where the smaller builders, they're more happy to work with you, especially because you're giving them 3. If you give 3 homes to a larger builder, they're doing 1,000 a year. They don't really care. You're just a number, Where when you're giving 3 to a smaller builder, that might be 10% of the houses they build that year. And you might be directly talking with either the supervisor or the owner of that building company. So you're a little bit more closer to the top, so you get to see it a little bit closer and you have a bit more control.
How small do you go before you're going too small and it's like, oh, this is a real risk? Because
That's true.
They might not know how to run a business. They could go bankrupt real quick. What's that kind of fine line?
Yeah, I guess we've only really dealt with builders that we've actually personally dealt with through the drafting company, or I've been through other developer friends, other builder friends, they would recommend. So, building that network, then that can build that trust. I'm not ringing random people off of Google and saying, hey, I see you don't build many houses. Do you want to build one for me?
Okay, so these are people that have come from like, I trust this trade and they're recommending them.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Yeah, friends might work for that builder, and they're like, these guys pay my invoices on time. Well, that's great. That's what I want to hear from a business, is that they're paying the trades invoices on time, especially if they're my friends.
And what's the difference then? Because I talked to some people about using like a project builder, like a whatever, I don't need to name names, like a big builder, versus actually just going, no, I'm going to go down like an owner builder route. I'm going to actually organize the chippy, the sparky, the plumber, the everyone.
Yeah.
What's the difference there? Because whenever I've spoken to developers about this before, they've kind of said the latter is a great way to lose a lot of money and go grey overnight.
Yeah.
You're better off just going to the project builder, letting them take their margin and running with that.
Yeah.
You agree?
If you want to do anything at scale, you need to not try and pretend that that's your job. If you're the developer, don't try and pretend to be a builder. So
tell me more about the difference, because I'd say a lot of people would class them like they'd smush them together so much that they almost seem like the same thing, but they're very different things.
Yeah. So I see my role as the developer as I go take an old piece of land and I'm going to chop it up so I can build more houses on there. I don't want to be the one actually seeing on site the tradie and then hearing about, the delay for the timber, or, the supervisor coming out and then talking to me. I just want that handled necessarily by the builder and let them get paid reasonably for it, while I can then go look at another site or manage the division of something in the background. Usually by build stage, we're kind of finished as a developer, or should be finished as a developer. Either you're starting to market, maybe they're already sold, maybe you're already into a new project, or at least looking to get a new project as you're through the build. So let someone else take over that role. Don't try and do it yourself necessarily.
So getting back to the question, I don't even think I actually asked it in its entirety here. When it comes to all of the high costs around construction and some builders going bankrupt, what I really should have asked was how do you best make the decision between split and sell versus split and build? But now I'm really looking at this and thinking it's not just about the numbers. How do you actually have that confidence in a builder? Is it purely just the referral you're talking about because they've come from somewhere good?
Yeah, and potentially, with that referral, you might be able to see those sites under construction. Go see their sites. Go see how the site's kept. Is it clean? Maybe speak with the trades on the site. And then see some finished products as well. Don't just go through their show home. Go through the houses that are under construction. And these are small builders. So again, if you've been referred to by a friend, that's probably someone they know direct, and they're probably happy to deal with you and actually show you, sort of sell you on their product. They're not just going to show you their shiniest one. Show me some of the ones that you've just got slabbed down. Flick me through your plans. Are all your waste and your services, are they coming up through the concrete nice? Does it actually work on the site? So you have to do a little bit more research, of all these people. I'm not saying spend weeks and weeks with each builder. They've come to you referral for a reason, but just do a little bit extra research just so you can get comfortable with it.
Yeah, because you've got the professional experience. You just said the services coming up the ground nice. I'm thinking of someone that's just wanting to get into this, but maybe they've got a background in IT or something that's just totally different. How do you just have a basic overview of knowledge for that kind of stuff instead of just going, I don't know, if that looks nice, sure, maybe it does.
Yeah, I guess how would you get that knowledge? I suppose you could just talk with the builders, talk with trades.
Ask more questions?
Ask more questions, yeah. There's never a dumb question, just ask. You're not expected to know what every single part of the build process is necessarily, and this is why you should be putting your trust in some builders. And I know it's hard to give up that trust because potentially they could go broke, they might be taking you for a bit of a ride, and that's challenging, and maybe that spooks a lot of people off from developing. And if that's the case, maybe that's not your core strategy. Maybe you should be looking at just selling the house and land, as in the land only. If you're not confident on being able to choose a correct builder.
Well, and I know because things can go wrong, and like you said, you got a lot of advice early on from other people going, "Oh, watch out! I lost lots of money in property." And whilst you've done exceptionally well, my words, not yours, it hasn't always gone like that. Tell me about when the wheels fell off.
Yeah. On my second deal, as I said, I thought, this is great. I've just subdivided the block of land. It's going to be valued at this. I've just done that. I should go buy another one. That's what all the books say. You've bought one, just go do it again. Just go do it again. It's easy. They're just numbers in a spreadsheet, numbers in a bank account. So I went back to the broker and said, look, this is what's happened. These are the 2 blocks. We could get it revalued. Can I go buy another one? He said, yeah, cool. Here's another, whatever it was at the time, $280,000 you can go spend. I'm like, this is amazing. As long as it's a rental, obviously, because, I've got a primary place now. I've got a block of land, and then we can just go find something else. So I ended up finding this auction, which was a mortgagee auction. I bid on that. I was the only bidder. I think there was another reno person. At the time, I think I bid 200, and I think that was just the opening bid. And that was it. That was the only one. And they said that we ended up going back and forth negotiating because no one else bid then. But obviously they didn't really want 200 because it's probably less than the actual mortgage on it. And so I ended up getting it for, I think it was about 265 or something like that. But the house was in quite a state. And so then we were like, well, we're going to have to renovate this to be able to get it livable again because there's almost every wall I think had a hole in it, cigarette smoke on the ceilings looked, beige. They didn't look white at all.
Yeah. That's
sort of
hard
thing.
to get off.
It is, yeah, very hard.
Do you end up just reject brogging it?
No, we tried lots of sugar soap, lots of cleaning, and then turns out if you just paint with wall paint, it's not as porous as ceiling paint. So paint it with wall paint first, and then you go all back over it again with ceiling paint. So it's probably got like 13 layers of paint on it, but there's no cigarette smell or stain on it anymore either.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're buying this place, 265, which is possible. Like that's a reasonable price. I know it seems like nothing now, but for back then for a renovator,
that's market.
Yeah. That's a decent price. And you're getting in there, you're making it look pretty. It's now livable. This is all sounding pretty good so far. Where's it start going bad?
Yeah. So while we were getting it livable though, I realized that I didn't actually have the money to pay for 2 mortgages at once. Even though I had my friend living with me, I was spending money on the reno plus the primary place mortgage plus the new mortgage, which was supposed to have someone in there tenanting it out. They were supposed to be helping pay the mortgage, as that's what you do. You add the mortgage into the calculation for the feasibility.
How did you just figure that out after committing?
I don't know. Again, it all works so well in the books. I didn't really know that at the time, God. And so at that stage, then I realized, pretty quickly after spending a few weeks renovating and watching the bank account draw down really quickly, I realized I'm going to have to sell that block of land and not build out on it because I'm not going to be able to afford this house and my primary, and I'm hemorrhaging money week on week on week. My salary isn't going up. It's actually going down like negative $500,000 a week, whatever it was at the time.
$500,000 a week. What were you on?
Or 1,000. And so then, I started projecting a runway and went, wow, I really need to get onto this ASAP and try and get this moving. And as you might know, land down in Morphettvale didn't really sell super quick. It's like a minimum like 90 days generally turnaround. So, I was like, had to go choose an agent. I then decided to do a bunch of drawings for the house as well, the new block of land, because it was a bit tight. Again, back in the day, 9-10 meters, that was really considered tight. These days, that's amazing. That's fine. But back then, 9 meters, people were like, no way, you could never live on that. And so I did probably 2 or 3 different designs showing what could fit on here. So then when the agent went to go market it, all the questions were, what house can I get? What house can I get? And he could show them something that actually would work on here properly so we could get that done and dusted.
How quick did you sell it?
I think we probably only got it in there with a few weeks to spare realistically by the time, because I had to market it and settle it within probably 90 days.
So open up a sec there. A few weeks to spare. A few weeks to spare from what?
From having $0 in my bank account.
So you were literally like a couple of weeks away from just going, I'm about to lose it all.
Yeah.
Okay. Jesus, mate.
I presume the bank will send you letters first for non-payments. I don't know. I mean, I bought a mortgagee sale, so I guess they would have to get it off me first, I suppose. Yeah,
I guess you're not going to lose everything in those 2 weeks, but the process of losing everything would begin.
Yeah. I think I heard something because of the GFC. Obviously, I watched like a lot of documentaries and stuff, that banks don't actually want to own houses.
No.
They want the mortgage. So they will try to do as many things as they can to not actually take your house off of you. And so I kind of naively went, you know what, well,
I'm good. I've got a bit more time than...
Yeah, you know what, if I go backwards a few months and just don't pay one of the mortgages for a bit, they're going to send me a lot of letters first,
I spoke to an agent, this is probably going back about 2 to 3 years, and it was actually kind of funny. He was that bad, it was comical. And it's like, I can't say his name because I don't want to just be that guy. But anyway, he said like back in the 70s, I think it was the 70s. No. So it would have been the 80s, like the whole Bank SA crash. He was listing all of these properties for the banks in Elizabeth, but they actually had these like sell dates with them. And it's something crazy, like 20% of the whole suburb was like foreclosed on. But they knew that if they just sold everything at once, they wouldn't get their money back because they just completely crashed the market. So they were selling all of the foreclosures off in stages. And because of this, people just got to stay in their homes for ages because it was like the banks didn't want to just go, we're taking it all and getting rid of it because, like you said, they're not in the business of property investing.
No. Yeah. And I learned something as well by buying that mortgagee sale and seeing the letters keep coming in from SA Water, that SA Water actually can never cut you off from water. So this lady hadn't paid for, I think it was nearly 2 years or something like that, and mail fraud or whatever. I looked at it. I was like, what's going on with all these SA Water bills? Are they mine? And turns out that she owed like several $1,000s, and then she only owed $1,500. Like, pretty please, could you pay us? And then it was like $500. Like, we'll just call it quits. Just give us a phone call, basically, from SA Water. And I was like, why aren't they like doing anything about this? And because water and sewer is like a human right for safety, and so they can't ever shut it off. Where power can get shut off, gas can get shut off, they can take your house, but they can never shut off water.
Does that make you think of Braveheart? They may take our water.
So, that was another lesson learned, that, there's some things that you can not get away with, but, you can push the envelope a little bit.
What else did you learn from it?
Yeah, I learned how to manage my money better, that's for sure, and actually start taking accountability for, when I'm going and buying these new houses, how much is that cost going to be, not just how much does the bank recognize that I could get in rental? How much am I actually going to get in rental? How much the mortgage is actually going to be? Am I in a deficit or am I in a surplus?
So you're doing like proper cash flow numbers now.
Now I'm starting to realize that, even if the bank garnishes, the income from the rental, as long as it actually services, then I'm still good on paper, in real life. Whatever the bank thinks is completely different. But yeah, I'm not going to go get myself into a negative cash flow position ever again.
For anyone listening now and they're inspired by what you're saying, maybe a little bit scared by the last bit, but otherwise inspired overall. And let's say they're in a position where they're like, okay, cool, this is easy for you now, Ross, because you've got X millions of dollars experience, blah, blah, blah behind you. If someone only had like 20 grand to their name, okay, so still great amount of savings. I think the average Australian is something like $3,500, okay, so not to take away from it. But in property development terms, 20 grand's not that much.
Not much.
If this was you, knowing what you know now, everything else was stripped away, you just had 20 grand, how would you start again?
I would start by networking with a bunch of different agents in this sort of, median low house price areas. Say in Adelaide, you're sort of talking in that sub $700,000 range, so either north or south typically. I would then try and get as many contacts as possible to say, I'm looking for a block that's ideally 750, 800 square meters in these particular zones. If they don't know what the zone is because they're just agents, they might not necessarily know. Great. Learn how to use the government website, specifically in South Australia, it's called sapper.gov.au. That'll tell you what zones the property is in. You can then calculate what and how many houses can go on that block. From there, because you've got it off market, you can potentially then negotiate a longer settlement, low deposit, maybe 10 grand, take that block to council, 10 grand worth of application fees, maybe an architectural drawing to show that you can get 3 houses on there, 4 houses, 1 whilst keeping the existing, get a DA, get a conditional development approval. And then from there, you can then go back to the agent, or you can go speak with some buyer's agents or some mortgage brokers and say, hey, I've got this development deal ready to go. This is what I've contracted it for. This is now what I want to sell it. You might be able to get something for 600, get a conditional DA for 10, you've got 10,000 deposit, and you might sell that for 650. Triple your money.
So you're talking about networking, so boots on the ground, phone calls.
Yep.
Getting to know the agents, getting an off-market opportunity, and then tying that up for 10 grand.
Yep.
Let's just to pick a number. Why not? You could potentially get it tied up for 1,000, but
easy, yeah.
To show that you're a bit more serious, understand why you're going the 10. Obviously, you're wanting to know that it's profitable first before you do this, because if you're then about to invest 10 grand into a DA, you want to know that the numbers actually stack up. So let's say you've done your research because you've been networking, you know the market so well, and now you've got a product that you don't own, but you own the right to purchase.
Correct.
So it's not an option, but it kind of is like the same kind of process as an option, but it's essentially just a long settlement.
Yeah. It's just a delayed settlement.
Okay. And so then you're putting this in front of other BAs and going, here you go, I've got this deal. There's money in it. And as long as there is money in it for them, your profit is essentially just on selling the deal.
Correct. Deed of assignment.
Deed of assignment. Okay. And now if it goes wrong, because again, you're a risk management man, do you have some kind of a clause in there to be like, I can't actually settle on this? Or is the clause, it's like, well, that's the risk. I could potentially lose 20 grand here.
Yeah. You just walk away from the deal. You know, you'd put in maybe a conditional for subject to finance, depending whether you could get finance or not, or, you know, whatever. You negotiate with the agent, you know, try not to be too tricky with them. Just go, hey, look, you know, this is what we're going to try and do. We're going to try and do a development. You know, I'm going to need some time to be able to sort finances out, you know, and then just hopefully they'll let you have that on as a condition. You know, they don't really like contracting up stuff for 6 months where, you know, 5 months in, it's a lost deal. But yeah, that's you have to have that conversation with the agent, and then, you know, you got to find that right deal. You know, there's not every single deal will do this. You know, not every single deal makes money just because it can be divided. So then not every off-market deal is going to be suitable for the vendor and for you as the purchaser. You
know, the thing I like about this is it's phone calls.
Yep.
Like it's literally, you could do all of this from your laptop and a mobile phone, possibly the whole thing just from a phone. And just about connecting the dots between everything, getting educated on it. You're filling your brain with as much knowledge as you can. There is a risk, obviously, attached to this, but you could even, if you could get it through as a deal, you could even minimize that risk by having some kind of a sub-finance, and then only half your capital is at risk.
Yep.
Yeah, I like this, man. Okay. And when it comes to starting again, is there anything else, words of wisdom wise, you'd want to actually leave with people that want to get into this space that are starting from a lower wicket?
I would say probably, the education is probably the most important part. You know, that's going to fill you with the confidence to be able to do a deal. And then from there, it's actually just making sure that you just take action, you know? So yeah, educate yourself, talk with a lot of different people, agents, brokers, you know, try and close as many of those, you know, loose ends as possible. So, you know, that in that specific market or that specific suburb, that this is exactly what an end product's going to be. This is what I'm going to be able to purchase it for, you know? And so then you're going to be really familiar with that market. Spend time on realestate.com or chatting with agents, going to opens, you know, boots on the ground if you've got the capability, or otherwise just trawl through realestate.com. Sold listings as well as current listings of both the current situation of the houses above 700 or 800 square meters and also below 400 square meters. What is the end product actually selling for? What's raw land selling for? What are the houses selling for? And then you're just going to build yourself some sort of database. And the more you do that, you know, you might then speak with an agent one day and he's like, oh, actually, just rocking up to a site now, you know, say Morphettvale, for instance, what do you think of this? And you're like, you already know, you've already looked at it. You just, what's the square meter rate? What's the zoning? You now know that if I can get it for X, I know that I can sell those 3 houses for Y, and then you're going to be able to make that profit.
And it doesn't matter, like you get obviously referencing Morphettvale, but it doesn't matter where you are.
Any suburb, yeah. I just reference that because it's the biggest one in South Australia.
Yeah, I actually think it's like the second biggest in the country.
It could be.
Like it's massive.
Yeah.
All right, so what I'm really hearing there is immersion. Make sure, like, it's the same as like if you want to learn a language, go to the country. Like just surround yourself with it from every single angle.
Yeah.
Because then if you do that, you know what everything costs, you've got connections, you know, like the timing of the market. It's almost like you're taking on that whole energy knowledge in its entirety.
Yeah, yeah. Take away all of those unknowns, so it makes it really, really difficult to fail now, basically.
I like that. It makes it difficult to fail. That's a good way of looking at it. Well, for anyone that wants to take it from a once-off to a full-time job, because that's what you're doing now, like you are a developer.
Yep.
Can you talk us through how you get ready to leave a full-time job, like the security of a paycheck, to actually make being a developer your full-time job? Because that, I'd imagine that's a bit of a scary transition, but the way that you've talked about doubt and the lack of it that you have, maybe not for you. I don't know if you...
Yeah. I mean, maybe I just fell into it. I kind of realized that after running a development, you know, for, you know, 1 year, 2 a year, that the development income was, you know, surpassing my regular job income. And so then it made bit more sense to me. That's like, well, why would I spend 30, 40 hours a week, for X amount of salary when I could spend 1/4 of that or less and still make the exact same amount? And then I was like, well, what happens if I actually spend 20 hours a week or 30 or 40 hours a week? Imagine if I just made the developing my full-time job. All of those unknowns, I'm going to be able to really educate myself on all of those, to the nth degree on many, many, many different suburbs and many different council zonings, so that it really narrows down the chances of me losing on any deal right down to, a very small fraction. And then the next step would be to, basically really minimize your expenses, not having super expensive, going out for dinner every single day of the week, or, holidays all the time. Not saying, live like a hermit, but you also can't have a huge lavish lifestyle if you're about to have a huge career change. And that career change relies heavily on a relatively decent sized bank account to bankroll these new developments.
How long do you drive an average car for?
I only literally upgraded my car a couple of years ago. I was driving a Volkswagen Golf GTI, obviously, because it's turbo and I'm a boy.
Yeah.
That was a cool car. I've had secondhand cars my entire life. I despise people that would buy brand new cars just because they got a pay rise.
Yeah. Okay. So you're not, like you said, you're not living like a hermit. You're not living in a box, but you're living in a way that you're not going, I can't afford to leave my job. That's what I'm hearing.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And money is bigger from your experience in the developments, which then gave you the contrast of going, well, this actually makes more sense, because if I can do this in 10, 20 hours a week, why would I keep doing this other thing that takes me triple the amount of time and pays me half as much?
Yeah. And you can't expand your hours. If you're working a 40-hour job, you can't just go, geez, I'd like some more money. I'll try 80 hours a week. That's just not really possible. Some people do it and you can do it for a short term, but it's not something you can do for longevity. Where I realized that if I was doing, say, 2 developments a year, earning 2 times what I was getting as a salary, what happens if I did 4 developments a year for only 2 times the amount of hours? So I went from 5 hours to 10 hours, or 10 to 20. That seems pretty cruisy, and it's not having super lofty goals, you know what I mean? As well, let's say your salary was, say, 100K and you're pulling 200K a year from developments. Are you happy with that? Probably. So then that's probably fine. Maybe you don't need to do 5 developments a year. Maybe one really selective one each year is good.
Well, and as much as it's cool to hear that you're doing, what was it again, 36 mil worth, and how many projects is that?
It's about 20 projects.
Okay. I'm imagining there's a certain level of like stress that comes with that as well. So I hear what you're saying. If you can still create a really good lifestyle off of 3 or 4, you don't have to shoot the lights out with 20.
Correct.
Gotcha. What's an action step? Something that if someone's like, I like this dude, this is cool, I want to be a developer, I want to do the same thing. What's something that they can pull out the headphones right now and put into practice straight away?
Go speak with your broker, work out what your borrowing capacity is. You're not going to be able to buy a house if you don't know if you can buy a house or not.
Okay, so straight to the broker.
Straight to the broker. Work out how much can I borrow, and then from there, that'll narrow down what suburb or area that you can actually do it in. So
instead of doing your research first, because you're looking at that as, who cares if you're an expert on area X if you can't actually afford to get into it?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I know heaps of people that know a lot about property and they just can't borrow money.
Yeah, Vaucluse expert.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, we've arguably arrived at the most important question of the entire show. I need to ask, Ross Versteegh, what is your favorite pizza?
I like pepperoni.
Pepperoni. Simple but classic, hey? Are you getting it anywhere special?
Add a bit of chili on there if you could.
Yeah, okay. Is this like an order? Are you getting it for lunch? You making it at home or are you getting it somewhere special?
I make it at home.
You got a pizza oven and stuff, or you just like...
Nah.
No?
I'm on keto, so I've got to make my own dough.
Oh, you too. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's like fathead pizza dough. So it's basically almond meal, eggs, parmesan, mozzarella cheese, and some cream cheese, and you just roll it all up like it's a big dough and flatten it out.
You ever had that one where the base is literally just cheese?
That's what this tastes like. Yeah. You can't eat much of it. You think you can, and you get like 2 slices in, you're like, I am very full. And there's a lot of cheese that I've just eaten.
I tried keto for a little while, ages ago. And I remember I found that Dr. Drew, the YouTuber dude, and he was making it, and he was so adamant about it all. And then same thing, I tried it, and I love cheese, but it was just like, it's a different kind of pizza. That's for sure.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie, like it's not the greatest pizza, but you know, sometimes you're just craving pizza, so you have no choice.
Yeah, but you're shredding at the moment as well, aren't you, mate?
Trying to, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, Ross, thank you so much for jumping on the show, man. You are, I don't want to say an anomaly, but there's something different about the way that you operate, mate. And I think that you're going to be someone to watch in the future, because I can only see you going from strength to strength. And we'll leave some contact details below if anyone wants to have a chat with you, mate. But otherwise, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Been fun.